And Paul Toboni was on your flagship home for the Nats yesterday for his weekly interview with the Junkies. This came after the trade deadline. And I wanted to play a couple clips when they talked to him about the financials within the organization, ownership commitment, money being spent. You know how I feel about this? I am nervous about when this ownership group will start spending again. Feels like the time to do so is this offseason. But I'm also simultaneously a little bit concerned. While I'm really, really happy with this new regime, and it's essentially exactly what I would have done is hire a group like this and ask them to move forward with R&D and research and development and all the analytics and the data and whatnot. I don't want them to try to recreate the Rays or the Brewers. You can do what the Rays and the Brewers do, but I'm also handing you a checkbook. It's a number 8 or whatever it is, media market in America. It's Washington, D.C. We don't need to act like a small market team. And in the back of my head, I just wonder, with every decision that's made, we assume ownership doesn't want to spend money. A lot of times when you're the Rays or you're the Brewers, you don't want to spend money because you kind of don't think you need to. And is that the way Toboni's going to operate? So let's play a couple of these clips and then we'll react to them. But let's start first with Toboni when he was asked why fans should invest emotionally when ownership has not spent the cash.
It's a fair question. I think what I would say, though, is just strip out like the dollars for a second. I think what fans most gravitate towards is winning. You know what I mean? Like if we're winning, I think payroll becomes a little bit less relevant, right? That there are a few teams around the league that are winning a bunch of games, and I think fans aren't talking about payroll as much as they are about them winning a bunch of games and the players that they love on those teams. So. I think it's like when we were early in the season, right? When we were probably exceeding expectations. My guess is that the fans were talking about us exceeding expectations and their love for Woody and CJ and these guys, and not necessarily that. So, we keep telling ourselves, hey, if we just focus on putting together a really good team over the long term and winning a bunch of games, I think the rest will take care of itself.
So that's a really interesting answer. Because he didn't say, look, it hasn't been time to spend, but that time is coming, right? He didn't say, the question is basically, why should fans keep spending money when the owners don't? And he didn't say, well, this isn't like the owners are never going to spend, which is the answer I think Mike Rizzo often gave. It's not like these owners have never spent. Look at 2019 and the World Series and all the years before that. He chose to say, payroll really doesn't matter that much, winning does. Fans gravitate toward winning, which I always talk about. When people call in and they tell us, I'm going to stop going to the ballpark, I can't support this ownership group, my response to that is, fan how you want to fan, do what you want to do, that's your prerogative. I'll see you when they're good again. You don't have to be here. This group's pretty smart. They're going to be super competitive. You saw that with their hands tied behind their back financially to some extent this year. And when they're good again, we'll see you at the ballpark. But I didn't necessarily want to hear Paul Toboni say that, as it pertains to, he said payroll becomes less relevant. Like, that is a bigger picture thought to me than just talking about the state of the 2026 Nationals.
So the question basically is, what do you say to fans that are looking at an organization that won't commit to payroll? And he goes, forget about payroll. Again, he's smart and he had a good way of answering the question, but that tells you everything right there immediately. Because what payroll represents isn't necessarily, because look at the Mets. You pay too much money and you don't win. It's an embarrassment. Everybody makes fun of you every day in the sport. You have the highest payroll and you lose a lot. Ha, ha, ha. Let's have a great time. Payroll represents commitment. You're asking me, when that season ticket bill comes, to give you money that I've earned. I'm giving it to you willingly with the understanding that there's an equal commitment from you. And if Toboni's point is, well, if we take this really different route and get there and we give you guys a bunch of wins, you won't care. Yeah, to a degree. But I'm excited to go see James Wood. Every fan, when casually we bring up James Wood, you go, well, when are they going to trade him? Because of the track record. Because that's what they've done. They haven't offered the commitment to keep that winning sustained. This group is really smart, and they'll find, like if you gave everybody, we had to do this project my junior year of high school in physics. We were given $25 to build a catapult. You know who did a really good job were the smart kids. They took that $25.
Right.
Mine, I got a C-, and that was a gift because the thing damn near broke. I'm an idiot when it came to that sort of stuff. My buddy built a pneumatic cannon and shot a tennis ball 300 yards. He won. He's an engineer. He's worth millions. The point is, I'm not. If you gave everybody $100, they would do more with it than 80, 90, 100% of the teams.
Yes,
but that's not what the contest is.
We live in a world where they don't need to only use $100.
Of course not.
But this goes back to my fear, and this, by the way, this answer does not assuage my fear.
Yeah, I think this is what's happening.
So my fear is that they want to be the Brewers and the Rays, and I want to be the Brewers and the Rays too, with money spent. And it seems maybe more like the with money spent part is not something they completely subscribe to. That's kind of where I'm going here. Payroll becomes less relevant when you're winning. True. He then talks about there are teams around the sport that win, and no one talks about their payroll. They just talk about how good they are and how good their players are. Who's he talking about? He's talking about the Brewers, who, by the way, have the best record in the National League for a second straight year with no payroll. He's talking about the Rays, who somehow, in a division with Boston and New York and all the really good teams that spend a lot of money in the East, they win more often than they don't. They're in the playoffs more often than they're not. They're really, really well put together. But those teams have never won a championship. And I know it's hard to win a championship. The Yankees don't win championships anymore either. The Mets don't win championships. There's a lot of teams that don't win championships that spend money too. But it is in the same way that like people, I was arguing with a buddy of mine who loves the Nats last night about their new pitcher. Cruz comes in, he throws 101. He's got the best slider via some of the stuff metrics last night in baseball. He had not a good inning. He threw more balls than strikes, and he gave up a run. The game was tied. And I watched that, and I go, oh, my God, they actually got a guy with some stuff in the back of the bullpen. He watched that, and he goes, this guy can't throw strikes, and he's terrible, right? And I guess my point is, like, I think when it comes to a team like the Brewers and the Rays, and the fact that they do it right, and the fact that they're so good, that is awesome. But they haven't won. They haven't gotten across the finish line. It is easier. The result is still very, very difficult to get there. The other thing he said, by the way, I want to hit on this real quick, because you mentioned Wood and CJ, because that was in the answer. I forget exactly how he get to that point of the answer and play that again. I forget exactly how he said it, but he's like, I'll bet you when we were good earlier this year and we were overachieving, everyone just talked about how awesome Woody and CJ are, and they weren't talking about our payroll, right? That's effectively what he said.
His point is winning is what matters, payroll doesn't.
Right. Because of your payroll, James Wood will not be here after this contract. Because of the payroll, if we're doing the payroll's not important, if that's your mantra, CJ Abrams is not here either. So you can't use them as the examples. You see what I'm saying? Of why the overachieving a team is overachieving and why it's okay to not have much of a payroll. Now, maybe his point is, next it's not CJ, it's Coy James from your system. And next it's not James Wood, it's some other outfielder we've unearthed in a trade. But living in a world where you don't have a significant payroll, you cannot keep James Wood and you cannot keep CJ Abrams. You trade Abrams this offseason, and then Wood, luckily, still around for a few more years because he's still in his infancy, but you eventually trade him too.
You know, I think fans aren't talking about payroll as much as they are about them winning a bunch of games and the players that they love on those teams. So, you know, I think it's like when we were early in the season, right? When we were probably exceeding expectations. My guess is that the fans were talking about us exceeding expectations and their love for Woody and CJ. And
James Wood is on a trajectory to be, I don't know what it's going to be at that time because the CBA is going to complicate this, but let's just say a $60-some million a year player, 65 million. Kyle Tucker got 60 this offseason, which is the dumbest thing that's ever happened.
That's insane.
And it's not a real thing, that it's just the Dodgers doing what they want to do. But like otherwise, the highest paid position player who's not a pitcher right now is Juan Soto at around $50 million a year. So if you forecast that several seasons, not knowing what's going to happen in the CBA, James Wood could be a $65 million a year guy. If you're the Brewers, you can't have him. If you're the Rays, you can't have him. So if you're telling me payroll doesn't matter, you can't keep players like that. That's not what I want to be. That is not what anyone signed up for here. If you want to do that, respectfully, and I love Paul Toboni, and I love this front office. They're going to win a lot of baseball games. These are my guys. I'm in. Go do that in Miami. If you want to do the thing here where you act like the Brewers 93% of the time, and then you also spend $40 million on an ace and 26 million on a bat that's going to hit you 30 home runs and drive in 100, now we got something. That's why I brought you here.
Well, when we look at the Rays and the Brewers, for example, teams that we often cite when it comes to this, the active player, the guy that plays Major League Baseball for Washington this year, that makes the most money is Keibert Ruiz. If Trevor Williams comes back, when he does, he'll be their highest paid player at $7 million. Like he's back, right? So I misspoke. Excuse me, but he's the guy that was playing for them mostly is Keibert Ruiz. Now that Williams is back, there are 6 players on the Brewers that make a lot more money than Keibert Ruiz does. You look at the Rays, there are 6 players that make more money than Keibert Ruiz. Like, their highest paid player is Steven Strasburg, who hasn't played in years, and their second highest paid is Trevor Williams. There are only a handful of guys that have a second comma in their payroll. Like, it's easy to say payroll doesn't matter, wins do, 100%. But he's the same guy that when he was hired, and again, it sounds like I'm being critical of him. I'm a big Toboni fan as well, but he talked about going to the games and having kids grow up going and seeing their players and guys that they really like. It's easy to say winning's the only thing that matters. Sure, there's also something else that matters too, where it's like, I'm not getting my kid any jersey of any player because it's going to be a short shelf life while they're here. Until somebody is signed beyond their first arbitration year, it's not a great investment to go spend money on an authentic jersey.
They're going to sign Dalen Lyle, maybe, or somebody like that, right? It's not going to be Wood. It's not going to be Abrams. It's not going to be a Boris guy or one of the big agency guys that doesn't do that. But this group does want to sign guys. I believe that. It's just going to be, you got to find the right guys to do it. And by right, I mean the guys that are willing to do it, that are good enough to do it with. The problem was, like, Keibert Ruiz left the Boris Corporation to go to a different agency to sign that extension, then went back to Boris. I'm pretty sure is the way that
I think
worked.
that's how it went down.
I know he was not with Boris when he did. I think he's back with Boris now. And I know that Boris would not have had him do that deal. But Keibert Ruiz was probably looking at it going, am I sure I'm ever going to make $50 million as a major leaguer? This was Toboni when asked about the possibility of upping payroll next season, which I think is important.
There's so much going on that you guys don't see and that the fan base doesn't see that, quite honestly, I probably haven't talked enough about, right? So, being able to develop guys at the major league level the way that we have, that doesn't come without a cost. It doesn't come without investment. And then our player development group too, like, going from whatever we were coming into the year, the 20th ranked farm system or 23rd or wherever we were, up until the top, call it 2 or 3 or 4, wherever we are. That doesn't come without real investment and doing it right, so to speak, at the in the minor leagues. And so I think that the problems are it's tough for fans to kind of realize those returns right away. And so while we have realized some of them in the big leagues with guys that are major league players, that's really fun. That's been great. But I think some of this there's going to be some lag time until you see some of these minor league players come up and they're really good versions of themselves. I think that's where a lot of this is going to shine through.
That answer was maybe more alarming. If the sheet you gave me, Dad, is that when asked about the possibility of upping payroll next season. So if the question was actually, are you going to spend more money next year? And that's the answer. That's scary because he said no in a lot of words. Now, he is 1,000% right. And this is where he's done an unbelievable job and his staff has crushed it. He says there's so much going on you don't see, and maybe we need to talk more about that. So I think strategically he goes back to the well and he's like, we need to start getting the word out that we're spending an S-ton of money on R&D, that we got the trajectory machines, not only in the big leagues here, but in West Palm Beach and at the AAA level. And next year we're going to have them at AA and at single A.
Yeah, it's the most cost-effective thing you can do is you spend, I'm making up the numbers, $1 million on a machine to turn a $500,000 player into a $5 million valued player. That's a better ROI than going to spend $30 million on a star. I really think this is how they got the job. Like, I think, look at how little you're going to have to spend, and we'll produce much better results for you.
Data investments, tech investments, staffing is way better. I think not only do they have, look at the major league level, their actual coaches are better than the last coaches, but at every level, they're better instructors. They're sharper. These are people that were at drive line and doing the very new school stuff that the last staff scoffed at. These pejoratives like drive line. Are you kidding me? Those nerds. I mean, those are the people that are kind of like running affiliates and stuff in the past, right? And are like coaching instruction people within the system. So all of that costs money. I believe, I was told, I haven't looked this up, but I think they have a way bigger staff of people, hands-on players in the minor leagues. All that costs money. That's not wrong. But again, the question was, are you going to spend more money on major league talent? And not only did he not say, yes, we'd like to, it sounded like the answer was, no, guys. The minor leaguers are coming. Don't worry. And they're going to be a lot better because we're spending money developing them. Which, when you're as close as it feels like they are, is not what anybody wants to hear.
No, the budget comes out of the same spot. In other words, you got $100 million to make your baseball team. That'd be lofty. You got $20 million to make your baseball team. How are you going to spend it? Well, 14 is going to be on player development. And the rest of it is, we're catching the scraps.
Trevor Williams.
Yeah, we're going to go see if we can find 3 more Curtis Meads out of the pile.
When you spend $3 million on a pitcher, you get Miles Michaelis. When you spend $7 million on a pitcher, you get Zach Littell. They can have decent outings where they go 5 innings and fool some people from time to time. They're veterans with some guile. But they're also going to have 4.97 ERAs after a bunch of starts. That's how that works. So you either develop really good arms, and this is the plan, the Sakuras and the Susanas and the Paralysis and whoever else, or you spend money on those guys.